Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics, reaching you live from our global headquarters here in the nation's commercial nerve center, Lagos. I'm Jeffrey Uzanga, bringing you up to speed with the big happenings in politics and in the polity. Let's begin with the headlines. Proceedings and activities paralyzed across courts over the industrial action of Judicial Staff Union of Nigeria, Osun, in parts of the country. There's a lot playing out across the country. The responsibility at midday is to give you the big stories and bring out the highlight as much as possible. One of the things we'll be discussing today has to do with the judicial sector, not necessarily Osun, but the consequence of some of the pronouncements of the courts, especially what's playing out in Osun State. But before we get to all of that, let's tell you that in a bid to ensure and enhance financial inclusion of majority of Nigerians, the presidency has reviewed the national framework on strengthening trust for sustainable economic and financial inclusion at an event which was convened by the Presidential Committee on Economic and Financial Inclusion in the State House. The technical advisor to the President on Economic and Financial Inclusion, Dr. Nuruddin Zaura, said the administration is bent on ensuring that every economically active Nigerian is not left behind in the country's drive to grow the economy. Also speaking, the Director of Central Bank of Nigeria adds that the bank is doing a lot to ensure consumers of the banking sector get a redress and restore their trust in the country's financial system.
The main objective is to keep engaging stakeholders to see how can we serve Nigerians better. So at the end of this conversation, we already have a draft framework. So today's discussion is to ensure that we cross all the T's and dot all the I's. You understand? To ensure that what we put in there, we have acceptance and ownership by all the stakeholders. At the end of the day, it will be issued as a national framework for the country. As we move on, if the situation demands legislation, then that will be action. Mr. President is pretty much ready, is available to do all that is needed to restore the confidence of Nigerians in this financial inclusion, in financial system, so that the poor man in the village that used to store his 1,000 naira under his pillow, or his 1 million naira that he sold his cattle, maybe in border markets in Nigeria, he will now be able to say, yes, I believe we have a trusted financial system, so that he will take up this money and take it to the bank.
CBN has done so much in ensuring that consumers of the banking sector get remediation. I think where the issue is that every complaint, the consumer push to CBN, which is the reason I said the workshop today is apt, bringing together various regulators from different industries, even beyond the financial system. So here, financial literacy will do a lot, which is one area CBN is focused on under the financial inclusion.
All right, let's get to our lead story that has to do with the judicial workers embarking on that strike. And one of the reasons, or some of the reasons they gave to trigger this one, has to do with the failure of the federal government to address sundry issues, including the payment of a 5-month wage award, implementation of 70,000 naira new minimum wage, as well as the 25-35% salary increase for workers under the consolidated public service salaries. So let's take a listen to some of the workers across different parts of the country.
The reason why we are going on this action is that we, the FCT High Court staff of the Osun, has not yet enjoyed the 70,000 minimum wage that was approved by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. We have not received that money since the implementation to date. We have also not received the wage award. That was an award that the federal government said due to the consequential adjustment of the time frame for the minimum wage. We have not yet received that. We have 5-month arrears. We also have 25 and 35% increment for the consolidated public service salary structures, which we are also part of it. As we speak, the federal government have no reserve fund for us. And before we embark on this strike, we have engaged so many stakeholders, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, the Secretary of NJC, the Minister of Labor, the Head of Service of the Federation, the Accountant General Office. In fact, as of yesterday, the DSS intervened. But at this moment, there is no any possible good result for us. That is why we must have to embark on this strike so that the government will listen to us properly and release the fund for disbursement of our members to enjoy these wages and minimum wage as we are talking about. Our plea to our members, they should be law-abiding. Our strike is not a demonstrative strike. We withdraw our services. We are not protesting on the street, but we completely withdraw the service of our members, and we told them to remain at home pending the result of the strike. And we are pleading that the government should quickly intervene and release those funds for the judiciary so that our members will enjoy it.
Our main demand is the wage award, one of it. Then the second one is the 25 and 35%, which were implemented by the federal government since January last year up till this month. Last month making it May of last month, up to that May of last month. Today is 2nd June. May of last month, we are yet to receive the outstanding, the arrears of the 25% and 35%. Then the third one, we are talking about the wage award. We have a pending wage award, which is yet to be paid. And up to this moment, we've been receiving promises and counter promises, all to no avail. The union patiently waited all this while, thinking that before now, all things will be resolved. Early this year, we scheduled for a strike, but due to the intervention of the authority, the judicial authority, we were able to shelve our strike. Up to this moment, we decided to activate the strike. This is an indefinite strike. It's not a warning strike, it's an indefinite strike. We are calling on the appropriate authority, especially the Accountant General of the Federation, let the office of the Accountant General Federation release funds to the Nigerian judiciary, to the NJC, so that our arrests will be disbursed to every chapter of the union.
Quite a situation in the judicial sector. You can imagine being a litigant at this time. Or your case was supposed to be heard in court this time, or you're supposed to be freed by the court today. This is happening, and it's an indefinite strike. We hope that the authorities can do something as quickly as possible. But something related to the judiciary as well as governance is the conversation we're having today on the program. And that has to do with what's playing out in Osun State. And it's almost like a political kind of a logjam with a twist around the law around it as well. But we've been joined on the program by a legal practitioner joining us right here in our Lagos studio, Mr. Festus Ogun. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
I had to write it down so I don't forget the sequence of how I wrote it down. Before we get to the core conversation, which is why we invited you, that's what's playing out in Osun State, because now we understand that the allocation from the federal government has been held back because of there are two councillors, or two sets of chairmen in that sense. One headed by the APC because of reinstatement, and then the one that elections were conducted by the PDP. So, but my question has to do with this. So, in this era, under this leadership, when I say in the last 2 years, we've had 2 houses of assembly in Rivers State. We've had 2 houses of assembly. We've had 2 deputy governors. Where when Obaseki was governor of the state, you remember what happened?
Yes.
We're having issues around 2 emirs in Kano. PDP national secretaries, at some point it's about 2. We have 2 Labour Party leadership. In fact, in Lagos, the Labour Party leadership is 3. That's why last year said they can't relate with anyone. And then now we have 2 sets of chairmen in Osun State. Now, all of these things I've stated, they are all outcome of judicial order or judgment. As a lawyer, how does this reflect on the judicial system in that sense? Both administration of justice and judicial administration, if I borrow the words of Leonard Sek or Lisa Bakoba.
Well, it's a painful reflection of the fact that the law does not rule in Nigeria. It's also a reality it's our reality that we are not a people that respect the law. In all of these issues, from the gale of illegal impeachment in Edo State to the leadership crisis in PDP, in the Labour Party, down to the complete breakdown of law and order in River State, down to the issue of Osun State. One thing I can see in all of this is the fact that there is no respect for the rule of law, because when you take a matter to a trial judge, whether as a claimant or as a defendant, you are only canvassing your case. The main person on trial is the trial judge, and that's why we call them trial judges. So, and most times they give pronouncements, and after the pronouncements are made, what happens? Look at the case of Edo State, for instance. At the end of the day, the court made it very clear that the impeachment was unconstitutional. I can tell you that in our democratic dispensation, there has never been any validly implemented impeachment in Nigeria. There has never been. Whether for the governor or a deputy governor.
The people have been removed from office.
Oh yes, they've been contested in court, and the court has always said that no, it is illegal and unconstitutional. Oh, I can tell you that. I mean, I've done my research on that. Look at Maduemere in Imo State during the time of Rokas Okorocha. Look at all other instances. It has always been a gale of illegal impeachment. So, the trouble with Nigeria, as I see it, as it has to do with the judiciary. Yes, the judiciary has its own issues. There are challenges in the judicial system. I would even say that we do not have a justice system, we only have a judicial system.
What is the difference?
Because what I have seen, I've practiced for about 5 years, and I can tell you categorically that we seem not to have a judicial system that is capable of producing justice. I go to court practically on a daily basis, and what I see almost on a daily basis is that, yes, you file actions in court, but are you able to get justice in the real sense of it? Not just judgment.
What do you call justice? Is it that it doesn't go your way so that, because I remember Kekere Okun, the Learned Chief Justice of Nigeria, said, stop bringing frivolous cases and petitions against judges. So the premise for suspending some of the people they suspended, reprimand for the people they reprimanded, demotion in that sense, and stopping from being promoted for a couple of years is to the effect that there were clear procedures of law that was not followed by these justices in the adjudication process. So when you say justice in that sense, is it because they didn't go your way, or is because processes were not followed? So we are clear on what we're talking about.
No, we have to be very clear. Let me give an instance. I, for instance, have a matter. I'm even defending. I wasn't the one that went to court. My client is defending. I'm defending my client in the matter. We've adopted. After adoption is judgment. The position is that when you adopt, within 3 months, judgment has to be delivered. It's over 5 months. There's no judgment in sight. Whether we get to win the matter or otherwise, whether the claimant gets to win or otherwise, why was there a delay? There have been instances where for over 2 years, you are still expecting judgment. The judge has not written the judgment. Whether you win or lose, the sense of justice has been eroded away.
Is it that so 2 questions so that we'll go to why we invited you. Is it the question of the judicial officers being overwhelmed with workload, or maybe automating our process will aid it? Because we need to also talk solutions here. What exactly is this challenge here?
The trouble with the Nigerian justice system is a very complex one. Very complex. One, we need to start from the mode of appointment of judges. How do we appoint judges? Can you necessarily become a judge in Nigeria if you are not politically connected? That is a question. Secondly,
that's an indictment on
it's not it's a rhetorical question. Can you become a judge if you are a child of nobody? That's the first question. Secondly, do we appoint judges on the basis of competence, or we look at other consideration? That is the second question. In the era of technology, how are we able to adopt technology in the administration of justice. Are we able to do that? Say for Lagos and some other states, are we able to truly adopt the use of technology in the administration of justice? Because, take for instance, there is a thing we call mention. When your case comes up for the first time, it comes for mention. To mention what? They say report of service. I have to travel from Lagos to Benin in Edo State because I want to report that I have served the defendant. Why should I travel all the way? Why can't I sit in my office and tell the trial judge, conduct a proceeding, and tell the trial judge, well, we've been able to serve the defendant. Again, there is issue of corruption. We can't hide from that. There is issue of corruption. And when I say corruption, I'm not talking about bribery of the judges alone. Okay. Or, I mean, the corruption in the system. It's a complex tragedy.
Maybe not necessarily complex, but it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Sometimes it's not as complex as we make it to look. It's just that the will to do it. So the last question on this before we get to the Osun story, so that you walk us through why we are here in Osun.
Yeah.
As far as this is concerned. Last question on this is, when it comes to obeying court judgments, not just order.
Yes.
Why do we always have a problem? Is it a problem from the bench not being clear enough, or the lawyers like yourself being mischievous sometimes with the greatest sense of respect? Because two lawyers are saying different things on the same judgment that is written in black and white and in English.
We are not a people that respect the law. And sometimes we lawyers have to be blamed too. Because in these issues, the positions are always very clear. We know what the position of the law is. In these issues, the positions are always clear. The principles of law are always clear. But some lawyers who are now politicians, they would rather prefer to turn the law on its head and somersault with it than state what the position of the law is.
Okay.
That's the problem.
All right, Mr. Ogun, we're going to go on a quick break. When we come back, we really dive deep into the Osun story, what is playing out in Osun State. So in Osun State, as we speak, we understand that the federal government has withheld allocation to the councils, and the reason is simple, according to the Commissioner for Information, that there was a reinstatement of some chairmen under the APC administration. Now, they said they were removed illegally and they got a court judgment, appeal court, reinstated them. Now, as that was happening, the PDP government under Ademola Adeleke also conducted elections, and of course, the PDP won literally every seat. So we now have two sets of chairmen, one of the APC, one of the PDP. So who is government relating with at the when it comes to that is the crux of the matter, which is why he's here to respond. We'll be explaining that right here on the program. Join us again.
When malaria knocks you down, you can be sure parasites are having a party in your system.
Welcome to our new kingdom, guys!
Comel, an effective weapon against malaria. Attacking the parasite army directly to give you express relief and get you back on your feet effectively. Comel on, malaria gone.
Welcome back. My guest is a legal practitioner, Festus Ogun, bringing us up to speed as to what's playing out in Osun State as far as the local government administration is concerned. It's a battle between 2022 APC-backed reinstated local government chairman and 2024 PDP-backed local government, elected local government chairman. Help us walk in the time we have. How did we get here? What exactly is going on in Osun State as far as LGA is concerned? Because as a matter of fact, 5 people have died, including a reinstated chairman, sadly. Okay.
A good way to start is to say that it all happened in 2022. Prior to the conduct of the local government chairman under the Oyetola administration, the PDP approached the court to say, make allegations in respect of the election that they speculated was to be conducted. At the time they went to court, no date has been fixed for the election. It was just a speculation. One way or the other, at the end of the day, they were able to get judgment, which nullified not just the election, but equally nullified the return of whosoever was elected as a winner.
So this is so for context, this was the twilight of Oyetola's administration.
Yes.
And he was conducting election into local governments.
Yes.
So that's the context.
So PDP went to court prior to the announcement that there would be an election.
Okay.
Announcement of the conduct of the election. Before the announcement that there will be a conduct of the election, they went to court. What we call prematurely in law. So they got judgment. APC appealed that judgment. That's the first judgment. Now, on the other hand, another political party, Action People's Party, APP, approached that same Federal High Court, being a political party who was to participate in that 2022 election. They approached the Federal High Court seeking to nullify the conduct of the election for being an infraction of the extant laws. That action was filed by APP after the announcement that an election is to be conducted. So, the APP equally got judgments which nullified the election and equally nullified the return of whosoever or those that were elected. The APC equally filed an appeal against the APP judgment.
So two judgments, one before, one after, and they both got
judgment.
And they all were
APC
appealed.
Filed an appeal
so
against
that we
it.
can be...
So the one filed by the PDP was set aside by the Court of Appeal on the basis that it was filed prematurely. You don't go to court to speculate. It has to be on the basis of fact. So it was rightly set aside by the
And
Court
that
of
happened
Appeal.
this year?
That happened early this year. The one filed by the APP, the appeal against the judgment of the APP was not prosecuted by the APC. It was not howsoever prosecuted. In fact, about 24 months after it was filed, there was no compilation of record. There was no brief of argument that was filed by the APC. What happened was that there was an application by one of the parties to the suit, which it was on the basis of that application that the Court of Appeal struck out the appeal filed against the APP judgment, which, legally speaking,
so
means that
the lack of diligent prosecution
means that judgment of the APP at the Federal High Court stands on the basis that there was a lack of diligent prosecution of the appeal filed by the APC, which means that, yes, the one that was filed in respect of the PDP judgment in the Federal High Court succeeded on the basis that there was no jurisdiction because it was filed prematurely. The one filed by the APP was completely abandoned, and the Court of Appeal, in their wisdom, rightfully struck it out for want of diligent prosecution, which implies that the judgment nullifying that election and the purported winners of that election was valid and remains subsistent.
The APP case, when did the court make a decision on it for want of lack of diligent prosecution?
Early this year.
So both came early this year?
They came almost about the same time.
So as a legal practitioner, in your view, because an election has been conducted and people are now in office, although they are not in secretariat, according to what I understand.
Yes.
In your view as a lawyer, who are the rightful set of people that should be occupying LGAs?
The position of the law is clear. That as of today, there is still a subsisting judgment of the Federal High Court in the APP's case, nullifying the election of those that have been purportedly reinstated. You cannot be reinstated when there is a clear judgment that has nullified your election. They came by way of saying, oh, we have been reinstated because the first judgment that nullified their return was set aside. But I beg to ask, was there any specific pronouncement in the judgment that says you should be reinstated?
So what's the PDP doing about this? Because now the chief law officer, we understand, according to the allegations against him, that's Lateef Fagbemi, by the government is to the effect that it's withholding allocation, or is he him withholding, or he's part of those? I'm not sure what is the right word to use now in that sense, but they are calling him out as far as this case is concerned. Is he the right person to be called out in this situation?
I believe strongly that there is no basis, there is no legal and constitutional basis upon which the local government in Osun State will be denied of their monthly resources.
So who effected that if the allocation is not coming? On whose authority is this?
Where is the allocation coming from? The allocation is coming from the federal government.
So that's why the chief law officer is involved.
Oh, the chief law officer has to be held responsible. Okay. He's the chief law officer of the government of the federation. If what ordinarily belongs to the people of Osun State is being denied, when there is obviously no legal or constitutional basis, there is no confusion. That is the point I labor to make. There is no confusion in this case. If at all, that resources that belong to the people of Osun State cannot be withheld. That is arbitrariness taken too far.
So what form of redress is the PDP-led government in Osun State taking? Are they approaching the Supreme Court?
I'm aware that there is a matter before the Supreme Court over the wrongful, what I see as the wrongful withholding of the allocation to Osun State. There should be, in fact, it is a painful narrative that we are having this kind of conversation in the first place. Because when a judgment says the election with which you purportedly got into office has been nullified, and you know that that judgment has not been set aside, you should not near the government house, because that will set not only a perilous precedent, that will equally bring about, disorderliness in the society. Let me mention.
Yes, you have 10 seconds.
Yes, let me mention this. Are you aware that after all of this, that matter that was struck out for want of diligent prosecution, the APC, knowing fully well that the implication of failure to prosecute that matter, they have approached the Court of Appeal to release it. To release that matter.
Isn't that legal to release?
It is legal to release.
So if it is relisted, isn't that subsisting in itself?
When that matter gets released, the fact that they have even made move to release the matter demonstrates the fact that indeed there is a subsisting judgment.
All right,
because if there was no subsisting judgment, they won't make an attempt to release.
So that means we have one at the Supreme Court, one released at the Court of Appeal. We're going to get the other side.
Attempting to release.
Yeah, attempting to release. So we're going to get the other side to come on the show as soon as possible to have their own say as far as this issue, because they were supposed to be here, but I understand they're having a press.
Well, I'm not on any side. I'm only on the side of law.
No, yeah, I'm just staying on the side of law. I'm going to get the APC people. It's only the right, because what you have,
they have the right to
fair
hearing.
Position.
Yeah.
Okay, Festus Ogun, legal practitioner. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I enjoyed my time talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, and that's it on the program. Thanks for your time and company. I'm Jeffrey Uzongo. You've been served on Lunchtime Politics. Bye-bye.